Hello, welcome to the Test Match Special podcast. I'm Jonathan Agnew. England have gone to the top of the T20 world rankings after a 3-0 whitewash over South Africa, having won by 9 wickets in Cape Town today, topped off by an unbeaten 99 from David Malan. And with me to talk about this, Tymal Mills, former England bowler, and of course our Stato expert, Andy Zaltzman. Good to have you both. Tymal, let's start with you. I guess the 3 games in a way have been much the same.
Yeah, a little bit. 3 victories, obviously, for England is the most important thing. I mean, Morgan, he's always one for trying to finish off a series. We thought he might get a little bit of experimentation with the side, get a few guys that haven't had a game ago, but wasn't to be today. But England, they will be thrilled of how they finished that inning, especially that last 12 overs, particularly from Jos Buttler and David Malan. It was brilliant watching. Well, not so much as a bowler, but it was brilliant to watch as an England fan.
It was brutal. Just a thought on those fellas who have come out. They've come out and they've done the quarantine and they've done all their training. I'm thinking of people like Moeen and Billings and Coven. And not to get a game in a dead rubber when you're desperate to get into that team. It's quite hard if you are the manager, coach, captain, to actually keep that pool, that squad, all happy, isn't it?
It can be potentially, and as a player, that's probably one thing that Owen Morgan and Chris Silverwood and Trevor Bayliss before him have done really well, and probably created a group of guys that, you know, they aren't selfish. The priority is the team, and look, you'd much rather be out in South Africa running drinks than sat in your living room in a cold wherever you live in England right now. So there's still the ODI series to go, still 3 matches to play, and quite a few guys are, you know, leaving the tour now. Jofra Archer, Chris Jordan, Ben Stokes, Sam Curran, I believe. Those guys aren't going to be involved in the 50 over leg, so. There will be opportunities for guys to come in, as you say, Billings, Moeen, Ali, and then also guys to add to the squad: Joe Root, Chris Rokes, Liam Livingston, Lewis Gregory. There's, as you say, England do have a lot of guys out there, but there are only 11 people that can play in these next 3 games.
Yeah. Andy Zaltzman, that was pretty bruising stuff. You got some bruising stats to reflect it.
It was. Well, there were some wonderful stats. There were stats to soothe any bruise, unless it's the bruised ego of some of the South African bowlers. Here's one for you, Aggers, and you know this is a moment of history that in this difficult year we can all cling to. 4 batsmen were undefeated with scores over 50 today. That's the first time that's happened in T20 international cricket. Really? There's only been 1 instance in all one-day international cricket for men and 1 in women's one-day international cricket. So in the whole history of international limited overs cricket, only the 3rd time we've seen 4 batsmen walk off with an undefeated half-century. That is what we will take away from this series.
Well, we will. And to name them then, Du Plessis 52, Van der Dussen 74. They batted really well for South Africa. They put 127 on in just 10 overs. 86 came off the last 5 overs. Stokes took a couple of wickets, but all the England bowlers took a bit of a pounding. 11 sixes were hit. Jofra Archer conceded 22 runs off his 4th over, which I think you'll confirm, Andy, is most expensive in all T20 cricket, isn't it?
Yes, he'd conceded 20, I think, in 4 overs in all T20 cricket, international and domestic, but 22 was his most expensive over in this format.
Just shows anyone can go. For England, Buttler 67 not out from 46 balls. He hit 5 sixes. David Malan 99 not out. He also hit 5 sixes, and he faced 47 balls in that. And their partnership, 166 in 14 overs after Jason Roy was out for 16 in the 4th. So they cruised home with 14 balls to spare. And let's start with Tymal then about David Malan. Did you think he knew there was only 1 to win? I gave him a bit of credit when I was on live and thought he just played for the team and pushed it for 1. I wonder if he knew there was only 1 to win at the time, whether he might have played a bigger shot to get his 100 up.
Yeah, his reaction at when obviously the game was finished was one of the man that thought he was going to get himself a nice 100, wasn't it? He looked a little bit disappointed with himself not to quite get over the line, but you can't be too disappointed, can you? 99 not out in a run chase. He played brilliantly.
He's very under the radar, isn't he? I mean, if you were to go out there on the street and just say, right, who bats in the top 5 or top 6 for England, the T20 team, I wonder how many, or where David Malan would come in sort of the overall cricket punters, sort of, that top 6 lineup, whether how high he'd be mentioned.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He's not the biggest name, hasn't got as many games for England under his belt. He's not played in the World Cups. He's obviously not which he's played a little bit of Test cricket, but he's not a household name like a lot of the other guys in and around him in that England side, as you say. But he's the number one name on the team sheet at the moment with regards to T20 cricket. He's the rest of the team kind of looks like it's going to work around David Malan at 3 and Owen Morgan at 6, and then everybody else is kind of up for grabs at the moment within the pool of players that they've got available to them. He's just so consistent. It's consistency that isn't a word associated with T20 cricket, really. You want to be coming good every 3-4 games potentially in a T20 game, but at the moment, David Malan, he's just not missing at all.
No. And talk of consistency, Andy, Chris Jordan is the highest wicket taker now for England in T20s. On the day, of course, that Stuart Broad, who he overtook, was nominated as one of the sports personality of the years for this year. He got to cock out each time in this series. I mean, I don't know how much he sort of claimed that in T20. A number of them were big hits caught out in the deep, but there he is, top of the tree.
Yes, and he's had a few difficult times with England in recent years, but has been superb in this series. And his pace, I don't know what Tamal would say about that, but he was frequently topping 90 on the speed gun. Just a little more on David Malan. His stats in this format are truly extraordinary. T20 stats are quite hard to interpret, and obviously it's a sort of relatively new format, and conventional stats such as averages don't always tell you that much about the game. But he's scored his 10th score of 50 or more in T20 International today in just his 19th innings. Only 2 other players have reached 10 50-plus scores in this format in fewer than 30 innings. That's Virat Kohli in 29 and Chris Gayle in 25. Two of the greatest players in, arguably the 2 greatest batsmen in this format, certainly internationally. Malan has 855 runs after 19 innings. Only 1 other player has scored more than 700 after 19 innings in T20 internationals. That's KL Rahul of India, who had 738. So what he's doing is truly extraordinary. And the 99 not out, I mean, he's the 4th England player to be 99 not out. Luke Wright did it in a T20 international against Afghanistan. He needed 3 off the last ball and could only get 2, England batting first. Alex Tudor, famously against New Zealand, left somewhat stranded. And today, Malan was like Graham Thorpe, and Tudor rolled into 1. He diddled himself out of the 100. And Jeff Boycott, 99 not out against Australia in a test in Perth.
Not 20 overs.
Absolutely not a 20 over game. In fact, I think I'm right in saying he carried his bat and was left stranded.
I think he was. I think Bob Willis was the other end. He's blamed him ever since. Let's talk a bit about England's bowling, because we know that Owen Morgan is pretty strict on this, and quite rightly so. He wants everything to be right. And there was a time there, and I know that Newlands hasn't got the biggest of boundaries in the world. It looked a pretty flat pitch today. Duplessis and Van der Dusen are good, powerful hitters, but it did look a little bit ragged there, Timal. 86 off the last 5 overs, and that's a bit of a spanking.
Yeah, and look, these guys are experienced T20 cricketers, not just for England. You know, they've all played in franchises around the world, so they'll be disappointed. I'm sure you'll come off. You'll see your figures of the vast majority of the guys went to over 10 and over, which you never want in a T20 game. I think you do have to give some credit to the South African batsmen. They played some brilliant shots. England did try various different tactics, mixing up their lines, lengths, and paces, but they seem to have an answer to whatever they threw at them. The England pace bowlers especially. But they will have a look at that. You're always looking at ways that you can improve. But from a team point of view, you know that if you're bowling first, whatever score is on the board, that the England batting lineup has a more than decent chance to chase down whatever total that they're set.
I think that's very true. While all that was going on, and those runs are piling all over the place, and the sixes are being smashed into the building sites and so on, we saw some cards being held up from the England dressing room, and they had a letter and a number. I looked down once, I saw C3, for instance, being held up. They were signals from the dressing room to the England team in the field. Now, the ECB have issued a statement on this, because obviously people want to know what's going on, and they said that the numbers and letters are intended as a live informational resource that the captain may choose to use or ignore as he wishes. They're not commands or instructions, and all decision-making takes place on the field. They were approved, they say, by the match referee, who's Andy Pycroft. He's quite a stickler, actually. I've known Andy a long time. And also ICC anti-corruption. Now, we haven't seen this before. We've seen something similar, I think, in 1999, all those years ago, when Bob Woolmer put an earpiece into Hansi Cronier's ear as he took to the field in the World Cup. I think it was at Hove. From memory, and that was soon rumbled, and they had to take it out because it was simply not on as far as cricket's concerned, because decision making does take place on the field. It's the captain's prerogative. So we'll get all our three thoughts on this, shall we? Because it is definitely a step into a grey area, at least. Timal, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I've not seen it before. Obviously, there was. I played in this year's PSL, and there was chat that the Molten Sultans were doing it. So Nathan Lehman, who is the England head analyst, he's one of the founding members of CricViz, one of the big data analytical companies out there in cricket at the moment. They were heavily involved with Multan. So I didn't even notice it playing against Multan. So it's not something that intrudes onto the game too much. But I'm not against it. I'm anything for progression and kind of advancements in tactics. Obviously, it is, as you say, it is completely up to the captains and the players' discretion whether he wants to use whatever information is coming out. But I guess you do have to be a little bit careful as to what information is being given from the sidelines. So I'm definitely keen for it, but as I say, you might maybe just have to just keep an eye on it a little bit.
Have you got any idea what C3 might have meant?
No, so that's the beauty of it, isn't it? And in theory, we should never know, should we? Because it's the advantage that England are obviously trying to get in this particular. Maybe it's so C3 means you need to bowl more wide Yorkers to this batsman or something. I'm sure it'd take a lot of revising, wouldn't it? Zoe Morgan got a little cheat sheet out on his in his pocket to see what the different codes mean, maybe. But
it was when this mayhem was going on, I thought it might be the seat number that the South Africa were going to hit the ball into next, because that was what was going on. Andy, what do you think about it?
I think it's possible that there was some kind of chess game going on between the players on the pitch and the coaching staff in the dressing room, and that was, I don't know, pawn to C3. That's a chess move, isn't it? I really don't like this, and there's no suggestion that England have done, as you said, anything wrong. But I think one of the fascinations of cricket is that when the players are out there, they have to make their own decisions. They have to process their own information. There's talk of an informational resource. There are already informational resources on the pitch. Those are the players' brains and what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. And I think the game will lose a lot if too much external input is allowed during play. And we see it in tennis, where players are on their own, and then their coaches aren't allowed to communicate with them at all. And I think in the WTA now, in certain tour events, coaches are allowed on every now and again. I think there's an element which the game loses something if the players aren't having to work out the puzzle themselves. Now, it works very differently in different sports. So, say in American football, obviously that's kind of, the game is run from the sidelines largely. But I think cricket has always had that. One of the great fascinations of it is the number of decisions and the fascination of the decisions that the captains are having to make. There's another element which I'm wary of with this, and that it is, we've seen in recent years the international game in particular favouring the richer, better resourced nations. And if this is allowed, then sort of teams with more backup staff, better analysts, more advanced computer technology get more of an advantage than they've already got. So that's another reason why I'd be wary of it. Obviously, I think they already thought they needed to sort of clamp down on the number of messages coming on and off the pitch during play with sort of bogus changes of gloves and things. I think the game would definitely lose some of its intrigue.
I think just
nuance.
Maybe a counter to that. It could also work the other way. Whereas a lesser team, they could go, okay, look, we're going heavily on analyticals here, and we're going to go a bit moneyball, whatever. And they use this. They take this and run with it 100 miles an hour and to the nth degree, and end up maybe getting themselves in situations that they might not have found themselves in otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good argument.
I wonder about the relationship between the captain and the coach too, because if the coach is putting all these signs up, whatever they mean, and the captain ignores them and they lose, I wonder, what happens in the dressing room afterwards. The coach is saying, "I told you what to do. You didn't do what I was told." There's a bit of an interesting dynamic there, isn't it? I mean,
and also whatever they were telling them today, England's bowlers were getting carted all over the place. So either they weren't paying attention, or it was
it struck me a bit, if I'm honest today, and you see it sometimes, as if they're sort of pushing into a new area without it ever likely really to have any difference. It's like the timeouts in IPL, and it would be in the hundreds. They achieve absolutely nothing, but it looks clever. C3, well, we'll have to try and find out sometime what that means. Maybe Jos Buttler will tell us, because he's been speaking to Stefan Schemmelt.
Jos, well batted. A clean sweep a year out from the T20 World Cup. How pleasing is that, and what shape is this team in?
Yeah, it's really pleasing. Sort of mission accomplished, really, to come in here with our strongest team, which was really exciting for us as a side, and to put in 3 really good performances and win the series 3-0.
What was going on at the end there with Dawid leaving himself 99 not out?
It's just winning the game, I think. He had a chance, obviously, in grade 6 from on 88 and that 4. So it was not deserving of 100, wasn't it? But I'm pretty sure he'll be happy with 99 not out.
You're part of the leadership group. What can you tell us about the information that was coming from the analyst? What's the thinking behind it, and is it something that you're going to stick with going forward?
I think a little bit of an experiment for Owen and Nathan. They obviously work closely together, working on analysis and things, and I think just a little bit of help to sometimes a little bit of a suggestion of what matchups are going on at the game. But no, Owen's one of the best captains in the world, and he's a fantastic instinctive captain as well. So there's a nice balancing act going on.
And can you draw any parallels to the 12-month period leading up to the 50-over World Cup? Can anything be learned, or is it completely different?
Oh no, certainly things can be learned. I thought the role clarity we had as a 50-over side, pretty settled team that, by the conditions, nearly picked itself. So that was a great place to be, and that's what we're trying to build in the T20 side. Obviously, it was fantastic for these 3 games to have all our players available. Obviously, in T20, guys go off and play in franchise tournaments, which is a huge bonus as well. And that brings a lot of confidence to the team. Someone like Jofra Archer being the MVP of the biggest T20 tournament in the world gives us a lot of confidence. As a dressing room, other guys performing so well in different tournaments all bodes really well for us as a side.
So there's Jos Buttler speaking to Stefan Schemmelt. And what do you make of his answer about these cards then, Steph?
Slightly coy, isn't it? I think he knows that maybe they've been, found out. I don't know if that's the right expression, but they've been seen to try something, and they know that it's not necessarily going to be everyone's cup of tea. So he's quite keen to say, even though Owen's getting these messages from the dressing room, he's still the man in charge. He's still a very good captain. He's got a very good relationship with the analyst. So that's something that Jos Buttler's keen to stress. But he was also interesting on sort of some of the other research that this England team have done as well, especially now that they've gone to the top of the World T20 rankings. And he drew a little bit of a parallel with their win in the 50-over World Cup last year. He was saying that we did our research at that point, and we knew going into that World Cup that generally it's one of the top 2 teams in the world that wins it. So he's saying, even though sometimes we scoff a little bit at these rankings and we're not 100% sure how they come about, that sometimes they do have some meaning, particularly when you go into these big global tournaments.
Yeah, I couldn't see his face, obviously, but he sounded, I think the team's chuffed to be number 1, aren't they?
Yeah, and Buttler was also, he was very quick to praise the other members of the team. Obviously, Dawid Malan, he had a little bit of a laugh about Malan being stuck on 99. He was very quick to praise the bowlers. Timal will be pleased to hear this, because I think we know that really when it comes to big T20 tournaments, you can have all the batting power that you want, but it really is the bowling attacks that win it. And he was particularly keen to praise Chris Jordan. Jordan becoming England's leading T20 wicket taker tonight. Timal's Sussex teammate. And also interestingly for Jos Buttler, he said that he's happiest opening the batting. Now, you remember during the IPL, Buttler actually shifted down the order for the Rajasthan Royals. He swapped places with Ben Stokes, and that was Butler's idea. He suggested it to Rajasthan, but he said, no, in this England team, I want to open, as probably 5 or 6 other players want to. That's what he said about the England batting lineup. I think probably it's the best way you're going to get a bat. What was it tonight? Johnny Bairstow, Ben Stokes and Owen Morgan didn't even make it to the middle.
And just a last thought, Steph, before we go, about Dawid Malan being stuck on 99 like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? He said that he wasn't quite sure how well it would go down if he turned a single down from that last ball when he was on 98 to win the match. And if you remember, this time last year, Dawid Malan made a century in a T20 international in New Zealand. It was the innings that really announced himself in this England team on the international stage. And from the very last ball of the innings, he turned down a run to the keeper. And after that match, even though England won, Dawid Malan got a bit of a volley from Owen Morgan, sort of suggesting that he didn't want his team batting for red inkers, batting for not outs. You should take as many runs as you can. And I think maybe that was Dawid Malan just alluding to that tonight. Maybe no matter how many runs he's getting, no matter that he's got his place at the top of the World T20 batting rankings, he's learned his lesson.
Fair enough. Thank you, Steph, very much indeed. A little more reaction from our listeners, actually, and those who have been following the game. Just observing perhaps it wasn't a great day for the Currans. In fact, I'm not sure Tom's had much of a series, actually, but Sam 0 for 35 off 3 today, and Tom Curran 0 for 24 off 2. Mark Palmer on Twitter observed that Tom Curran is the weak link in the England bowling lineup. Timel Mills will be a better bet for me, and that's been doubled up by Freddie Wild, no less, who's the CricViz analyst. New faces coming in less than a year into the World Cup is unlikely, but one player I really think could add to this England team, if he can stay fit, is Timel Mills. Statistically, one of the world's best death bowlers, left-arm option, and adopts an anti-Yorker method. Well, Timel, what do you reckon to that?
Well, it's nice to hear.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely in my aspirations. Yeah, look, I had a good summer for Sussex. I was with Morgs a couple of weeks ago out in Dubai with Chris Jordan. Also, we were playing in some exhibition event, indoor cricket thing, which was good fun. But it was good to actually just catch up with Morgs, just ask some questions, see where you are in terms of thoughts, if you're still kind of on the radar. And he says that they still keep an eye on everybody, and come next summer when they're really going to start to build up to the World T20, everybody's hat in the ring. So that's all I needed to hear, and I'll just focus on keeping my head down and put in some performances in the winter leagues, and then come Sussex and the 100 next year, hopefully kind of be in the mix come then. But that's definitely what my aspirations are, and hopefully I can get back there one day.
Maybe drop the Morgs and start calling him Skipper. What do you think? That might make it. He might like that, I think that might be the way to go. Andy, stats, come on! If you could back up those tweets.
I've got some stats. Tom, I don't know if you're into the stats, but this is something that came up in the summer when we were looking at England's death bowling. I've looked at the major T20 leagues around the world. So it's just domestic T20, the 7 sort of biggest leagues since September 2015. And of bowlers who've bowled 40 or more overs in the death overs, and there are 92 of those bowlers in all these leagues combined. Tamal, you have the best economy rate, 7.48, ahead of Rashid Khan, 7.56, and Wahab Riyaz, 7.59, as well as 47 wickets, average 16 in overs 16 to 20. And if you look at the top 8 bowlers in terms of economy in the death overs in this sample of the top 7 T20 leagues, 5 of them are left-arm pace bowlers. So that's clearly something that's been very effective in T20 cricket generally, in white ball cricket over recent years. And I would imagine if England are contemplating options beyond this squad, then you would hope Tamal would be amongst them.
Fingers crossed for you, Tamal. You stay fit. A couple of points then before we move on. Ben Stokes bowled in the last couple of games. He took 2 for 26 today off 3 overs. We're still puzzled as to why he doesn't. There are games where he doesn't bowl, but that was the case today. Just a Jason Roy moment, can we, Andy? He's not had a great series, and Tamal, perhaps you can go in first. I mean, I was watching him bat against the left-arm spin today. And it's the obvious tactic with Jason Roy, isn't it? You open with a left-arm spinner, Jason Roy. He just seems to me like he's trying to smash the ball too hard now. It just seems to be getting to him a bit. He's looking a bit frustrated. I know he did hit a 6 eventually, but I like seeing Jason Roy when he's got a little bit of a strut and he goes out there and he goes bang, bang, bang. He makes it all look so easy. But when that spinner's just tossing it up early on at him, he just seems to be wanting to smack it, and it just seems to just put him out of rhythm.
Yeah, I think look, Jay Roy's the type of guy that if he does find himself in a little bit of not ideal form. Let's say there's only one way he's going to try and get himself out of it, isn't there? And that did look quite apparent today. He was eyeing up Linda from that first over, didn't quite connect with the first few, but then, as you say, hit a six towards the back end. But he obviously didn't play in the IPL. He chose to sit out. I know he picked up a few injuries during the English summer. Wanted to spend some time at home, get his body right. So he's still got plenty of time. As I said when we were doing 5 Live updates earlier, I think he's earned a decent amount of run and a decent amount of trust from Owen Morgan and Chris Silverwood for the performances that he's put in over the years for England in white ball cricket. Obviously, there's three 50 over games to come just now, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Jason Roy is raising his bat in one of those 3 games. But you just need that little bit of luck, don't you? A little bit of time, but other teams maybe coming into it will look at this series. Okay, maybe we'll have a look at Jason Roy left arm spin, especially T20 World Cup come back at the end of the year is going to be in India, so the potential for a little bit of spin, although the wickets tend to be pretty good out there now, with some pretty flat pitches that you see in the IPL in particular. So just something to keep an eye on, I guess, over these next three games, and then England do go to India to play in a one-day and T20 series in the new year also.
Roy's series, Andy?
He's had 3 innings, just 30 runs, averaged 10. He started the year well in South Africa in T20. He's got a 70 and a 40 in the first 2 games. And it's quite hard to, with T20 batting, I think, a sort of 5 or 6 innings sample doesn't necessarily tell you very much. I guess the greater concern for England would be that he had a very unproductive summer in one-day international cricket as well, and his form really since the World Cup, when he came back from injury and played a massive role in getting England through the group stage and then batted brilliantly in the semi-final as well. His form since then across all the 3 formats that he's played in has not been great. He had a pretty good summer with Surrey in the T20 Blast, and as we've been saying, he's a player with a prolonged record of success in international cricket, particularly ODI cricket, not so much T20s, but the stats on that can be misleading. So I think he's clearly a player that England will show a lot of patience with.
Final thought on this match in the series. Michael Vaughan's been tweeting, that's rare. He says, whoever beats England will win the T20 World Cup next year. There you go. You agree with that?
Well, potentially if it's in the final.
Yeah,
going out on a limb there.
Yes, I think he's probably right.
I think England will be favourites going in alongside India, obviously in home conditions. But yeah, I think with the head of steam England have built from the World Cup win onwards, the way they're playing the one-day cricket, the strength and depth that they have, they're one of the few teams in the world that, say 3-4 of the starting lineup could, hopefully it doesn't happen, sustain injuries, and they'd still be not too hampered by that. So I think obviously 11 months out, whatever it is from the World Cup, England definitely the team to beat for me.
Yeah. Well, next 3 one-day internationals, have a quick look at those. They start on Friday. Who's coming in? Root, Livingston, Gregory, Wokes and Stone come in, having a rest. Archer, Curran, Milan, of course. Ben Stokes having a breather, and Chris Jordan's going home as well. I should mention there's no Rabada for South Africa. He's been ruled out. He's got a groin strain, which is a shame because you want all the teams to be at full strength. I suppose first question to Mel. I mean, what do you think England wants to take away from these matches? They're sort of rebuilding now in terms of 50 overs. It's sort of swiveled round a bit, hasn't it? The focus on T20.
Yeah, you're right, and as you say, it is a shame that Rabada won't be playing for South Africa because he's obviously one of the world's best bowlers. But yeah, there's going to be some guys that are going to get some run. The guys like Reece Topley, Moeen Ali, Sam Billings obviously were in this T20 squad, didn't get a game, so you'd like to think they'll come into the side. Mark Woods, he would have been chomping at the bit to get out there in the T20s. He obviously bowled brilliantly in the T20s this summer back in England, so he'll be steaming in. As you say, you'd like to think he'll come straight in for Jofra Archer. As you say, he's going to go back home and have some rest, and then you've got guys that are just kind of trying to find their way. Lewis Gregory and Liam Livingstone being 2 that they want to make a claim. They want to try and not just be in and around the squad, kind of the 14th, 15th men. They want to prove that they're good enough to be in that 11. And then obviously you kind of your seasoned campaigners, your World Cup regulars, Joe Root and Chris Wokes, kind of the 50 over white ball specialists, if such.
Yeah, and South Africa, I don't know. If you look, I mean, they're in such difficulty, aren't they? And without Rabada, Clarkson was injured again today, or not feeling very well. I mean, it just doesn't seem to be happening for them at the moment.
No, they've been in something of a dip across all formats. They were at a very, very poor World Cup, a tournament which they generally at least start well. So yes, they are in what is looking like a potentially extremely long rebuilding phase. Just a little more on England, and they're sort of focusing more on T20 than one-day cricket. They played so little one-day international cricket since winning the World Cup. But in T20, 8 wins, 3 defeats this year, 6 wins, 2 defeats last year. 7 wins, 2 defeats last year. So they've won 15 of their last 20, which in T20 cricket is very good. They'd won 12, lost 14 over the previous 3 years. So it's a huge improvement in England's form. They've now won 5 consecutive series away from home in T20. That's including a one-off game in Sri Lanka in 2018. And today, 192 for 1 is the highest target successfully chased in a T20 international for the loss of fewer than 2 wickets, and it showed the power of England's batting. You think they have Adil Rashid coming in at 11, and you look at the difference between those two sides, and we'll see it in the one-day series as well. The depth of both batting and bowling. South Africa only used 5 bowlers today, even though they were going all over the park, and their tail really began at 8. England, with Stokes as a 6th bowler and Rashid coming in at 11, we see that the depth that was so crucial to their 50-over World Cup triumph now starting to really come through in T20 cricket as well.